Yeah. Do not fear, Saf is here, and this is Saf Buxy from Saf Surgery, and we are a show about addiction, trauma, and mental health. And we have been trying to transform lives and listen to people's lives of transformation over the last, how many months has it been? Look, Shazza, tell me, how many months has it been since we first came on?
December the 8th. I remember it well.
December the
8th.
8th.
First
Where does
time.
time go when you're enjoying yourself so much, hey? Isn't it? It's been a wonderful, wonderful journey thus far, and,
Oh,
and long may it continue. How's your week been, Shazza? Talk to me. Talk to me, Shazza. I know things they don't know. I know. Sorry?
it gives us, I mean, the good part about it is we get good, relaxing time, that we can actually do things that we wouldn't, all these jobs that we've got to do. So I'm getting loads done in my garden. I bet other people are as well.
Yeah.
My
Well,
garden's
look,
looking
we
good.
we had a great show last week.
Oh,
We had Jason. I mean, he was incredible, wasn't he?
dream achiever.
Dream achiever, yeah. So and today we have a very special guest. We're just waiting for Christine to come on to come live. We've had a few technical issues. That's the one
Good
thing,
morning.
technology is so great, isn't it? Technology is so great, but sometimes you do get that little thing that happens back and forth. But yeah, so last week, Shazza,
Oh,
we
it
had
was amazing, wasn't it?
Jason Archdale last week, and the funny thing is, the guest we've got on today, Christine, actually knows Jason, and I think she prompted Jason to get in touch with South Surgery, I believe. But we'll find all that out when we chat to Christine. But just to let you listeners know that we are not live, but by the time you hear this, it will be Sunday night. And the reason for that is that we can't get into the studio. But hey ho, it's one of those things. So, anyways, look, without further ado, Shazza, anything you want to say?
Oh, just that I'm so excited about Christine coming on because she has a story that I couldn't forget. When we had a meeting with her and we spoke briefly to her, she told a story, and it's just been a big part of my memories, and it keeps coming back. So I'm so excited that she's on the show.
I'm
So
excited
excited.
as well. I'm excited to ask her a few questions regarding her terminology for different things, because I think there is a difference, and it will all come to light when we introduce the wonderful Christine. But should we have a short little break and then come back and then
Absolutely.
see Wagwan? Yeah. So back in a mo.
Yeah.
Right, do not fear, Saf is here, and this is Saf Surgery, and this is Saf Buxy, and we got Shazza in the studio, and welcome, and I hope you guys are keeping safe and keeping well during this pandemic, this crisis that's been going on for God knows how long, but hey, the show must go on, and that's what we're doing, and we have a very special guest today, Shazza. Would you like to introduce our wonderful guest?
Oh, this week we have Christine Wright. She's a habit breaker, and she's an amazing woman who's been through a lot. And I can't wait for her to tell you her story.
Well, without further ado, welcome, Christine. Welcome to Saf Surgery.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a
How
pleasure.
exciting.
Oh, excited to have you too. We had someone you know quite well last week on our show called Jason Archdale. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to his story. I know you know it anyway, but it was we had a lot of great response, especially people who suffer from mental health, and that's what we're about. We're a show about addiction, trauma, mental health, how one can transform their lives, and so forth. And I guess having you on our show is an example of someone who's been there, done it, worn the t-shirt, and if you like, come through the other side, and you're a survivor. And I think that's what attracted myself to you, because I can relate totally. Tell us a bit about your story. We'll come on to your beautiful project that you're involved with called The Habit Breaker, but tell us a bit about your story, about the early years of Christine Wright.
Wow. Okay, yeah, I do know Jason. I know Jason very well, and I'm glad I did actually listen to the show, Saf, last week, so that was good. But my journey really began when I was 14 years old, so we're talking 30 years ago.
Oh, you don't look a day older than 25.
Right, thank you, sir. so yeah, I was 14. My parents were going through a bitter divorce, and it was at the time where, you know, you used to go out sneaking drinks with friends, you know, in the park and things like that, and that really is the start of my alcohol journey. I started to use alcohol at 14 as a crutch to help me get through mum and dad's divorce.
Did they get a
Because there
divorce
was,
about that time when you were 14? Was that when they?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I actually found out certain things throughout mum and dad's relationship, which was quite a lot of weight for a child to carry.
Yeah.
And I felt a lot of the reason the whole divorce was going on was down to my play in what I knew. So I really, when friends and I went out drinking, I would always drink to excess and get completely obliterated at 14 years old.
Wow. Did you have
Um,
any siblings yourself? Or
I
were you
had an older sister.
And how did that
Uh,
affect her? It seems like it didn't affect her the same way as it affected you.
well, mum left, and Elaine, my sister, she's called Elaine, she's 3 years older than me, and she kind of took on the role of mum. So dad actually worked away as well. So he was a HGV driver, so he was away numerous evenings. So Elaine then took the role of mum, because obviously mum left and we stayed with dad.
Hmm.
So
How was
that
that?
really,
How was that for you? 14-year-old.
that was tough. And it boils down to, obviously after a lot of therapy, it boils down to abandonment. I had a lot of abandonment issues with
Why did you
mum. I
blame
felt
yourself? Why did you
uh,
blame yourself?
because I was very close to both parents, and I was very much a tomboy. So I was always in the truck with dad, or stock car racing, anything, shooting, we'd go clay pigeon shooting. I was the tomboy. But yeah, I was also very girly with my mum.
Hmm.
So I had my loyalties. I always felt as though I had a loyalty to one, and if I spent more time with the other, I felt guilty. There was a lot of guilt, and I don't know why that was. We were, our family lifestyle, I would say, we weren't affluent. We were poor. We were very poor. I remember my dad being unemployed for 7 years with no carpets in the house, you know, in the living room, and it was quite a shameful time as a child, because, you know, when you started to bring friends round, I never brought friends round because of the embarrassment factor.
Hmm.
But obviously I found out certain things throughout mum and dad's relationship, and I just carried that weight with me, and then which then progressed to mum leaving, and me staying with my father for, oh gosh, probably a year,
All right.
because the alcohol was kicking in, and I was getting a little bit belligerent, shall we say. I was a little bit of a tyrant. He gave me the ultimatum: you either live in my house and abide by my rules, or you go. So I went and lived with my mum after that. And mum had a new partner, and we didn't see eye to eye. So at 15 years old, we were kicked out, and mum and I were homeless at 15.
Wow.
Um,
And where's your sister? She remained with
my
your father.
sister, yeah, my sister stayed with my dad. So obviously when I left dad, that was it. My relationship with him was just cut off completely. He didn't speak to me for, I think it was best part of 2.5 years. You know, so when my sister was celebrating her 18th, she got a little car for her 18th. I got no birthday cards, no nothing. So there was a lot of jealousy on my part in terms of my sister and myself.
Hmm.
And I always felt, and it sounds really crazy, and this is where I know I am healed from that trauma, but there's still that element of, am I good enough? I still look up to my sister and realize, are my expectations leveling what her expectations are? I always felt that she was the one who's done the best, you know. She's got a brilliant husband, she's got a wonderful child. I'm the one with divorced, you know, I've got 2 lovely kids. But there's always that, am I judged? But that's my own self, that's my own insecurities. That's nothing to do with Elaine. Elaine's lovely. And we do have a
Comparing
good
yourself, aren't
relationship
you,
now.
all the time?
Sorry?
Making comparisons all the time.
Massively, and I'm sure she does, you know, with me, but we don't look at the other side, do we? It's that, oh gosh, you know, she's, you know, and later on you'll find out, I mean, my sister was diagnosed with cancer probably about 5 years ago, and we, at that point, we weren't speaking due to other things. And she never told me, so I had to go on that journey knowing that she had cancer, but wasn't allowed to do anything with her. And when we did come back, start speaking, one of the first things she said to me was I'm so sorry for keeping you out. I know I wanted you in my life at that point, but for whatever reason we didn't. And she just turned around to me and she said, Christine, I do not know how you do it. You've got a business, you run a family home, you run a tight ship, and you know, you're divorced, you've got all these problems with your health. She said, I feel very blessed that I've got an amazing husband, supportive, everything. She says, and you've done it all on your own. She went, I just genuinely don't know how you cope. And I went, well, I see myself blessed because I've not had to go through what you've gone through with the cancer and everything else. So again, that was a time where we really started reflecting as adults on each other's lifestyle and how it played out with both our mental health. But that's a whole different story. I wasn't expecting to talk about that today. That was something completely
It happens that way.
different.
And you know what? This is a show that we talk about whatever you want to talk about. And we are here to give a message of hope to people. And even the story very briefly you just talked about regarding cancer and your sister and how it can affect the person who's struggling with cancer, or even how it's affecting people around them. I think people will be able to, and our listeners will be able to resonate with what you've just said, however brief and however irrelevant, or however you think that's not what we're about. We're about everything, you know, Christine. It's that for me, that is obviously we are mainly mental health and addiction, but trauma can be anything from physical, mental, whatever. And already in such a short space of time, you've already mentioned the traumatic, the trauma that you went through at such a young age. And trauma can happen in varying degrees, as you know, but regarding, you know, at 14 years old, going through a divorce, blaming yourself in some ways for that divorce, staying with your father, then having an ultimatum to stop your lifestyle at that time, which obviously included alcohol, or to leave.
At that point, Dad really didn't understand how much I was drinking. It was me doing my dad was a very strict father. He was he was from the military as well, so he had the military background. And you know, for that I am grateful, because we had some great times. I was the one driving in tanks and messing, you know, my dad was very jovial as well. Even though he was strict, he was the mischievous one. He was very mischievous, and I think that's where I get a lot of my traits from. I'm very, very like my father. And it came to I remember, you knew you were in trouble with Dad if he was sat bolt upright in his chair. And I came home from school and I'd basically lied to him. I said, you know, I'd not been out that weekend. I'd stayed at a friend's house, but I hadn't. I think I was 15 and I'd gone to a local nightclub at 15. I'm not an advocate of that. For any of your listeners, you shouldn't do that. But I lied to him. His friends saw me in the nightclub, and obviously that message got relayed back to my father. And he just said, Christine, don't lie. I know you're lying. And I'm like, I'm not, Dad, I'm not. And he's like, you were out. Where were you? And again, through my teeth going, I was at Lindsay's. I was at my best friend's. And that was it. There was a little bit of a scuffle and a little bit of a fracas. And he just went, right, you know, I'll give you the ultimatum. You either stay or you go. And if you go now. You don't go when I'm at work tomorrow. and put that pressure on Elaine, your sister. So I just went to bed that night, phoned my best friend, and her mum came to collect me the next morning. She says, right, that's it, you're getting out. You don't, the whole situation was not controlled very well. And that's when I went to go live with my mum and her new partner.
How did you feel when you got that ultimatum from your father? How did it feel? Did you not take him seriously, or did you think, oh, it will boil over? As kids.
No, I knew I was in trouble.
You knew that,
I knew I was in trouble. I knew that I was probably ending up having to leave, but I didn't have the guts to leave there and then. It was like, if I leave now, he will go absolutely ballistic. And
was he surprised, do you think, that you actually took the decision to leave?
There's one thing we've never discussed. I think with Dad was a very proud man, so when Mum left, his pride was completely dented, and he suffered with his mental health at that point. But we didn't really see that as kids. We were kids. We just thought, I now understand mental health a whole lot better. And looking at how Dad's reaction was when Mum left, it was evident, he suffered. And also looking back on how Mum is evident that she suffered. And I guess with me in adult life now, going through my own bitter divorce, I see traits of what I did or what Mum did in what I did when I was getting divorced. But in terms of going back to Dad, I don't think he would have thought I would leave. I don't think he thought I'd have gone. And I think that's why it affected him so badly, because there was always that element of fear, because he was so strict, that I always did what Dad said. My sister always, if Dad said jump, we'd go how high. It was that kind of family household, just the way respect. It boiled down to respect, but a little bit of military bullying, if you wish.
Military
I don't
discipline.
know.
We'll put it discipline, shall
Yeah.
we? But do you think he regrets giving you the ultimatum today? Is he alive? Are your parents alive?
No, my mum's still with me, and very sadly my father passed away. It'll be 2 years in September. But I think, does he regret it? Probably not, because my dad's too proud to say, yeah, I messed up there. He's a typical Yorkshire bloke, very proud, very get on with it, don't let the world know what's going on. And in terms of emotions, he wouldn't show his emotions. So he wouldn't, I don't think he'd ever say, yeah, I messed up. So
wow,
that's just, and before Dad passed away, we had an amazing relationship. Everything just slotted back into place. My relationship with my father kind of grew stronger with the birth of my first child. He was a brilliant granddad. So I can't really fault Dad in how he was. It's just the way he was, and that's still love him dearly, speak to him daily, and I know he's up there looking out for me. So he's got a lot of work to do up there, Saf. Keep telling him.
I'm sure, but you know what? I'm sure he's proud, and your mum's proud, and your sister's proud, because I know a bit about your story and what you're doing now, and from what you were when you were a 14, 15-year-old girl to what you are today. I think you should be truly proud of yourself, Shazza.
Well, it's a difficult age for anyone, just getting through your teens when all your hormones are going everywhere, to go through the trauma of having your mum and dad breaking up and not even understanding. And the other thing, that we were all brought up, weren't we, that you didn't air your dirty laundry in public, so everything was kept in a tight bubble inside our houses. Yeah, but now we can speak more freely, can't we?
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of shows like this. You know, it's, you don't have to take that tension and those stresses on yourself. You can actually be open about it, and the fear of judgment, you know, not be there. And, you know, it's because, like I said, going back to when I was getting divorced, I could see traits of both how my mum and my dad were when I was a child. And I'd think, right, that makes sense. I could understand it as an adult, but as a child, it was just like, what are you doing? What are, and the frustration as a child was like, come on, you're meant to be, my dad will always be my hero, but you know, you're meant to be my hero. You're meant to be the man who is the strongest, and the man who I go to when I'm in trouble, and I can't even get you out of bed on Christmas Day morning. Come on, what are you doing? You know, and we literally had to phone my auntie and threaten my father. Right, we're gonna phone his sister to get him out of bed. And you know, it was that kind of thing. But I can totally relate on how such, because you know, divorce is so readily spoken about and discussed, but the actual implications on mental health throughout a divorce it isn't highlighted, I don't think. And also the effects of a divorce on a child or children, it's not discussed openly. So I think that is something that needs to be put out into the world and said, right, okay, you know, because I came from a really traumatic divorce. I remember lying in the court of law saying that I'd not seen my mum because I was so scared of how dad would react. And they actually knew. They took me into the judge's chambers at 15 and said, Christine, you know, your dad won't find out. Just tell us exactly what is going on. Oh. And I had a court liaison officer. I had support and everything. And, you know, and I think at 15, I was going through my GCSEs and I just think, God, you know, make no wonder I started to drink to block it all out, because of the pressure of upsetting my father, because my loyalties were to him, but then also being guilty because my loyalties were with my dad whilst I lived with him, and being guilty about not seeing my mum because my dad was like, you don't see that woman, you don't see that woman. And it was always that woman. It was never mum. It was always that woman.
Never by her name either. And I think that sort of, you know, confirms the proudness that he had. And yeah, and wow, what
a lot of pressure to put a child under, though, because it made you and your sister a part of the problem rather than it being your mum and dad's problem, and that you were just the casualties.
I think that's quite common. I think that's quite common where the children do suffer. It's I mean, I remember when I was going through something similar, and I was on the verge of divorce myself. And my daughter, who must have been at that time, she must have been about 16, 17, and she always said, "It's better to live in two happy homes than one unhappy home." But I know if that divorce had taken, and I'm happy that it didn't, but I know if that had happened, then I think that would have been tough on them as well. But luckily, we worked through it, and I came out of the madness, so to speak. But just like you have, because we were in the madness, weren't we? And whatever the reasons were, and usually it is only on reflection I can see that it was survival for me and coping through what I was going through. Only now, well, not now, only since I came into abstinence, I realized at the time I didn't. At the time I just thought I was selfish and someone who liked to take drink and drugs and have a crazy life. At the time that's what I thought it was. Now I reflect back and I realize it wasn't. Should we take a little short break, Shazza, and come back? We'll be back in a minute. Do not fear. Saf is here, and this is Saf Buxley from Saf Surgery, and we are a show about addiction, trauma, mental health, And we've got a wonderful guest, Christine the Habit Breaker Wright. That sounds good, doesn't it? Christine the Habit Breaker Wright. So it sounds like kind of WWE, a habit breaker, like an MMA fighter, isn't it? Christine the Habit Breaker Wright. Is studio, and we've been discussing her childhood, and how tough it was for her at the age of, well, that tender age of 13, 14, 15, where she experienced and went through her parents' divorce. She started drinking alcohol and having a lifestyle that goes with alcohol at such a young age, and then she was given an ultimatum to leave or to change her ways from her father. She left and stayed with her mother, who was at that time seeing someone else. So it was like she had a stepdad, which wasn't the greatest experience after all that. And we've been talking about how things were sort of going down at such a young age, and at a age which was, she had her GCSEs at the time, so it was an important academic time for her as well. And in fact, I want to start from that. How did this affect your studies, your GCSEs? This whole episode. So now you're living with your mum, with her partner. Obviously, you're still having some communication with your father, I guess, or maybe not so soon. But then you got GCSEs. How is your education going? And you obviously
I
as well, aren't you?
was, I was very blessed. I had a very, very great. My teachers were fantastic. I had good schooling, and they obviously knew about what was going on. More so when Mum and I were homeless.
That's right.
So
Yes.
we actually, so we kind of left Mum's. Well, we were told to leave Mum's partner's house, which meant we lived in bed and breakfast. So whilst we were waiting for housing, the government housing, council housing, or we had to go live. We had to go live in bed and breakfasts who would support us. So I think we moved around. I think we lived in about 3 or 4 different B&Bs, and they would get us up early. I'd have to leave early, so I would actually be going into school for 8 o'clock, because breakfast was between 7 and 7:30, and then you had to go. So the school were opening it up for me, so I could get into school at 8 o'clock. And it was a Catholic school, so I just used to hang out with the nuns. And I thought it was really cool. I was just sat in, hanging out with all these really cool nuns that I thought, which, going back to when I was really, really young, Saf, and you'll find quite surprising, is I actually did want to become a nun from the ages of about 9 to 13. So for about 4 years, I used to go to church every morning before school and do the Stations of the Cross. So for me to hang out with the nuns early before school, I thought it was pretty cool. And then also they left the school open for me late on an evening, because we weren't allowed back into the bed and breakfast until later on. So my school day would really start at 8 o'clock and finish at 5. Before and after, I would be either in the chapel at school, or I'd be in the art room creating artwork. So that was pretty tough. And then when we moved from the bed and breakfast, we actually moved into a homeless unit, which was a shared accommodation. So we had, Mum had a bedroom, I had a small bedroom. We shared a bathroom, we shared a living room, and we shared a kitchen with a guy and his daughter. So it was like one big bottom floor flat, but within that homeless unit, which is what they called them, homeless units, we'd had 3 break-ins. I was privy to a lot of things I shouldn't have been privy to. Drugs, sex, even more alcohol. So of course, I just, right, okay, my coping mechanism was the drink, and it's like, right, okay, I'm going to get drunk, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get drunk, and everything will go away. So I started to build up a pattern, and that cycle of behaviour was, where's the drink? And at that time, it will have been things like Thunderbird and Mad Dog
Thunderbird.
2020 and
Diamond
Diamond
White.
White.
Diamond Whites, yeah, I remember them.
You
Who else has
know,
that? Diamond Whites. What was the
it's like blast
what's
away when you
it?
mixed it.
Lambrusco? Is it Lambrusco? I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Brusco.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bad drinks,
Bad drinks, yeah.
nasty drinks.
Well, they're all bad, aren't
But,
they? But especially for people
and
like
then,
us.
yeah, but then that was just my life at that point. And it going back to my GCSEs, I did okay because I was spending so much time at school. I did okay, considering. I got my grades to get into college, so I went to college from there. And at that point, I knew I did business and finance at college. Scraped my way through that. I don't really remember much about college. Scraped my way through that. I had some good friends, and I very sadly at 17, another traumatic experience happened. So I'm a survivor of rape, and that happened when I was 17. So again, it was just like, okay, just pass me the bottle. I'll just deal with it that way. And I confronted the guy who did it. And unfortunately, his girlfriend was there when I actually went to speak to his girlfriend and say, look, this is what's going on. This is what has happened.
Is this his girlfriend at the time when he did this dreadful
yeah,
act? Oh,
yeah.
God, yeah.
And the night after, the night it happened, I walked home. It was at a house party. I walked home, and it was probably about a 3-mile walk. And I got home, and again, this is where mum's mental health came into play. I got home, told my mum, and I remember being sat in the bath for about 6 hours, just sitting there, and nothing was done. And it was like, I've just told you what's happened, but you're not going to do anything about it. And because mum didn't do anything about it, I didn't do anything about it, because I thought, well, who's going to believe me if my own mum doesn't believe me or doesn't do anything about it? Again, I can see how mum's mental health was affected by the whole trauma of her and my dad's relationship breaking up. And these are things that I've had to work through. And this was only last year. I had some amazing healing last year, and what came up was the fact again that I'd not felt like my mum acted appropriately for what a daughter of 17-year-old was telling her, and I had to deal with that. And that was my kind of, okay, I know that's not right. I should have been taken to the police station. Or the police should have been called. And it just didn't pan out that way. So I had a lot of, okay, so why didn't your mum do it? What was going on in your mum's world? Why do you think what was mum's background? What was mum's childhood like? And I was completely taken back into mum's kind of mindset to understand why mum acted or didn't act accordingly for something that was so catastrophic and quite traumatic.
And what conclusion did you come up with? Why did she not act? Why did she not go to the police? Why did she not support you the way you probably needed at that time?
I believe that it was, she didn't have a great childhood herself. Mum was in a children's home. She was brought up in a children's home. She was a family of 13, so she was a sibling of, I think it was 13. And I think 9 of them got taken away to a children's home, and 3 or 4 of them stayed at home with her mum. So mum was never really shown any, I'm going to say, love or nurturing, or she wasn't able to be guided in how to deal with problems when they arose. And I do believe that has impacted mum a lot throughout her whole life, her childhood. And then obviously with my father and the relationship she had with my father. It wasn't a great relationship. As a child, I could see it wasn't a great relationship. It was quite volatile. And she had a lot to contend with. And I just think my mum wasn't in that mindset and that process there, and she couldn't process there and then what I told her. Because she herself was going, yeah.
So that was, we weren't expecting that, Shaz, were we? I mean, did your father ever learn about this serious sexual assault that happened on you?
No, because he would absolutely go and lynch this guy.
So he never knew?
No.
Oh.
No, my dad would have been one of them to literally drag him, and he'd have ended up in prison.
So you protected your father rather than let him help you. That's something that happens quite often as well.
Yeah, I know for a fact my dad would have ended up in prison.
Did you confide in anyone else at that time, especially when you didn't get what you really should have got from your mum at that time?
My friends knew because they were at the party. A few of them were at the party. They tried talking to me about it, but because I didn't have, I was like, but my mum hasn't done anything. So what is the point? I remember at those words, like, what is the point? What is the point in me going to do this? And it was also a time, I was 17. So we're going back 30 years ago. It wasn't something that was, again, discussed much, was it? It wasn't something that was discussed openly, and the chances of you getting the guy to court, or getting the court on your side and believing your story. And again, that was also another thing. We were at a party, there was alcohol at play, but it was probably about 3 or 4 weeks before the party. So I kind of knew this chap just through parties. And about 3 or 4 weeks before this particular party, we were at another party, and his words were, he came up to me, I was in the hallway, and he just went, I'm going to have you. And I just laughed it off. I just joked it off, and I thought, I was like, just go away. Just go away. I had a boyfriend at the time. He had a girlfriend. And he was just like, that's what, I'm going to have you. And I just laughed it off because I just thought he was just being an idiot. But yeah, he meant it in a different kind of way.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and Shazza, it's powerful, isn't it? It's powerful stuff, and if any listeners are finding it hard to listen to, we apologize for that, but some people need to hear this story, and it's all about how you came through this and how you've come through it today, and I think it's important that we discuss issues like this, and we have done in previous shows as well, but it's always a hard one for me as a presenter to hear, and for Shazza as well, even though I do relate to some of it in terms of the sexual assault side of things, but it's always hard, and it's always not nice to hear. But what is nice to hear is where you are today, and that's what we're going to discuss in a bit. So we'll be back. Do not fear, Saf is here, and I know things they don't know I know. See you in a bit.